Yes, this is Kerry Palmer with the Hickman Mills United Neighborhoods again. This portion of our format will now be focused on the Missouri House races. So the Missouri House races represent the lower chamber of the Missouri General Assembly. 163 members representing districts, the average size of about 37,000 residents. Our first tonight will be District 25, which is roughly 47th Street to the north, 103rd Street to the south, State Line Road on the west, and Rock Hill Road on the east. Our two candidates in that race are Drew Rogers and Patty Lewis. Without further ado, we'll go right into the questions. First one will be for Patty Lewis. How's it going?
Hi there, had to unmute. Hi, thank you.
First question tonight is, what is the one big issue facing South Kansas City neighborhoods, and what is the one thing you would do to fix it?
Well, I'm talking to voters every single day, and the number one issue I hear over and over again is a concern about healthcare. Even prior to the pandemic, with the failure to expand Medicaid, and now during this time, folks are concerned with what does back to school look like. They're concerned about the economy and small business owners. Healthcare affects every single aspect of our life, the way we go to work. Now we can see the way kids are educated. So, I think the one thing I would do to fix that is we have to, address healthcare. I believe it's a right, not a privilege. I anticipate we will pass Medicaid expansion in August, and then it will be my will to protect the will of the voters.
Drew Rogers, same question. What is the one biggest issue facing South Kansas City neighborhoods, and what is the one thing you would do to fix it?
Well, thanks for having me. And I would have to agree with Patty on this issue, or on this question. One of the biggest things that we've been hearing has been healthcare, especially since COVID has hit. But it goes beyond protecting the will of the voters. I will be voting to expand Medicaid as well on August 4th. But there's a role to play in the legislature for oversight, and we need to keep on top of the administration to make sure that Medicaid expansion is implemented in the right way, that we're covering as many folks as possible. And I look forward to bringing my experience as an attorney to the table to be in those committee rooms, to be in those hearings, and ensuring that we are overseeing that process well. I also look forward to having different leadership of our governor's mansion in January. So hopefully we can work a little bit closely with a more friendly administration to implement such an important program that's going to be delivering access to 230,000 Missourians. Other big issues that we've been hearing in the community are infrastructure in South Kansas City specifically, and criminal justice, specifically police reform. And have to disagree with the takes from the candidates for sheriff earlier. I believe we need local control, and that has been an issue that I've been hearing exceedingly over the past several weeks, especially after the death of Mr. Floyd.
All right, thank you. Drew, you'll have the next question. How would you correct the large and many times how would you correct inaccurate property tax assessment increases so it wouldn't happen again?
Yeah, that was an issue we heard a lot about, especially when we first started our door knocking program back in August of last year. So many of the residents of the 25th district were potentially going to be forced out of our neighborhoods because property taxes rose so quickly in our neighborhoods. We need to increase funding. The Jackson County Assessor's Office had a budget somewhere between 100% and 200% less than that of the budget in St. Louis County. And they had to then rely on Google Maps to investigate some of the properties that they were being asked to reassess. That's unacceptable. We need to have the ability to hire assessors who can go to the properties, make a real investigation of our neighborhoods, and assess property values that make sense for individual homes and are not generalized based on how a neighborhood is in transition in one direction or another. I've got a background in real estate. I went to UMKC for both my law degree and my MBA. My MBA was focused in real estate. So I look forward to bringing that to the table, to work with the assessor's office, to work for legislation Missouri-wide that will allow assessor's offices to be more fair and equitable when it comes time to reassess properties.
Miss Patty Lewis, same question. How would you correct the large and many inaccurate property tax assessment increases so it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. I definitely recognize that. And we should have never increased the percentage of taxes at such a short period of time. Folks were given short notice of the increase, and then the appeal process was just as confusing. You know, I heard it on the doors, you know, as well, that what do I do to appeal? And it was very, very confusing. So I think that, you know, this is a Jackson County more focused issue, but as state legislature, I will fight to ensure this never happens again and support measures for oversight in addressing, if it does happen, that there's a streamlined approach for appeals and let the folks' voices be heard.
So Patty, next question will be for you. This is a two-part question, so you'll have 2 minutes on this one. What is your opinion on the expansion of Missouri Medicaid, and how can we be assured that the will of the voters won't be overturned again, specifically right to work and Clean Missouri?
Right. Well, I absolutely support Medicaid. I've been in healthcare for 20 years as an ICU nurse and as a healthcare executive. I took care of so many patients who were admitted to the hospital, admitted to the ICU, in fact, because they couldn't afford their prescription meds or did not have access to preventative healthcare services. You know, instead they ended up in the hospital costing thousands of dollars a day, missing work, getting further set back financially because of their hospitalizations. So I believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And, you know, I will do anything in my power to protect that and fight for the right for accessible, affordable healthcare for everyone. And the second part of the question was, what was it?
The second part of the
voters.
question was,
Yes, yeah.
how can we be assured that the right of the voters won't be overturned again, such as right to work, Clean Missouri? So how can we assure that won't happen again?
Well, unfortunately, in this current climate, it's difficult to assure that that won't happen again, because in November we are going to be voting for dirty Missouri, and we'll have to turn it down. So I think what we need to do is to reach out to different areas. We need to continue to flip seats. I plan on when I win the primary, focusing on other districts to help other candidates get elected. So once we get more Democrats in office and it's more of a level playing field, we can focus on real issues that matter to Missourians instead of doing this cycle of undoing the will of the voter, such as right to work, Clean Missouri, and dirty Missouri that'll be in November. So I think a simple answer is we have to vote, and we have to.
Drew, question is for you.
Yeah. First part of the question, I strongly support Medicaid expansion. I also believe that healthcare is a right and not a privilege. We need to do everything that we can to activate voters in advance of the August 4th primary, when Medicaid expansion will be on the ballot. I've been doing my part, making phone calls. Every phone call that I have with voters, I try to work in that. I hope they'll expand Medicaid, vote to expand Medicaid. We need to go further than that. We need to ensure that everyone here in Missouri has a right to health care. We need to not wait for Washington to do something on that. If they're not going to act quickly, we need to be pushing for universal health care here in Missouri. But that dovetails right into the second part of the question, was how do we protect the win if we are successful on August 4th in expanding Medicaid? Missouri is controlled right now by a Republican governor and a supermajority in both the House and Senate Republicans, and they are not necessarily so excited about Medicaid expansion being on the ballot. That's why they moved it to August. They're going to do everything in their power to overturn it. Luckily, we got it on the August ballot as a constitutional amendment put forth by the voters. That carries a little bit more weight. This is the exact same process we used for Clean Missouri, and they still have the ability to overturn it. It's going to be, as Patty said, all about knocking doors in districts where we can flip seats so we can break up the supermajorities in the legislature, both houses. I consider the most powerful person in Missouri government to be the Speaker of the House in the Missouri General Assembly. We need to do everything we can to not give him a veto-proof majority, and then we need to work as hard as we can to elect a Democratic governor in November. So win or lose, I will be out there knocking doors for our statewide candidates and for candidates of other districts where we can flip seats.
Thank you, Drew. Next question will be for you. This is a 1-minute question. Where'd Drew go?
Sorry.
Oh, okay, it's fine. Okay, Drew, do you agree with local control of the Kansas City Police Department?
Yes, I'm
And why?
100% supportive of achieving local control of the police department. This has been an issue familiar to me going back into 2018 when I started attending the legislative updates at the Missouri Bar Conference in St. Louis. I was looking forward to potentially running for the seat at that time, so I went to all the legislative updates to meet other Missouri legislators and get their take on a few important issues, local control chief among them. It's so important that we can hold our leaders accountable, and I know that the sheriffs were saying how bringing politics into the police chief's role is not necessarily a good thing, but I have to strongly disagree with them. We need to be able to hold our leaders accountable. We need to, and the chief of police, whether we like it or not, is a political office, whether they're elected or not. They need to have the support of the people that they serve, and they also need to have the support of the people elected to the city council. So I look forward to building relationships with Republicans who generally believe in local control of different.
Drew, I got to kind of cut you off on that. Sorry for the time constraints. We got a long agenda. Patty, same question for you. Do you agree with local control of the KC Police Department? And you have 1 minute to answer reason and why.
Yeah, absolutely. I support local control. It's about time. It's obviously not working, what we have in place. You know, this dates back to the Pendergast years, and it's time to bring control back to our city. I believe in transparency, accountability, de-escalation training, and these are things that we can address here as a city.
Sorry, next question will be for you, Patty.
Okay.
What ethical issues have you faced in the past? How did you overcome them? And how will you ensure that your office doesn't face any in the future?
To my knowledge, I don't think I have faced any ethical issues in the past. I've got a pretty clean slate. I guess as a leader at the company I worked for, it was brought to my attention that 2 members of my team, there was a sexual harassment accusation. So I addressed it and escalated, worked directly with our human resources and associate members to address the issue. They investigated and they did their end, and it ended up in a termination of the person who was accused of sexual harassment. So these are things that I take very seriously. If there is something, I will address it immediately, escalate and address appropriate channels as needed.
All right, thank you. Drew, have the same question. What ethical issues have you faced in the past, and how did you overcome them? And how will you ensure that your office doesn't face any in the future?
Absolutely. Every day, ethical considerations play into what I do in my role as an attorney. it's very important that we not only advise our clients to the legalities involved with whatever issue that they're facing, but also what is ethical. So, and that's what I try to do every time somebody asks me for advice when it comes to the law. I advise them what is legal and also what is ethical. In my work as an attorney, I also must be ethical. I need to ensure that I'm billing my clients and I'm doing excellent work for them, that I'm not focused on other activities. And that's something that I experience every day with this campaign. I work full-time and also campaign full-time. And it's important that I separate the two things. So I try to keep my work separated from my campaign. And when I have to jump in to campaign in the middle of the day, making sure that I'm not billing my clients for that time.
Thank you very much, Drew. The next question will be asked by a student of the Waldo Tower neighborhood. So I'm going to turn it over to that student right now.
My name is Maggie and I attend a Kansas City public school. What do you see as the biggest hurdle for public education in Kansas City, and what do you intend to do about it?
I think the biggest hurdle that we face, especially here in Kansas City, is kindergarten readiness. We build prisons based on third grade reading levels, and our third grade reading levels are impacted or foreshadowed by our kindergarten readiness. What I intend to do about that is to fight for increased funding for public education throughout the state of Missouri, focused on pre-K, universal pre-K for the state of Missouri. Also focusing on programs like Start at Zero, which work here in Kansas City with the local school districts to provide resources to parents as soon as they leave the hospital with their newborn to start the readiness for kindergarten. So I met with the Angela DeWild, who works at that program, and she said that right now Kansas City Public Schools is currently funded about half the level that they need to meet all of the families who could benefit from that program here in Kansas City Public Schools. So I'm going to fight for increased funding for that. I'm going to fight for increased funding for our transportation networks within the school districts, and also to streamline them, because here in Kansas City we have charter schools and each one of those have their own transportation network. We'd like to find some efficiencies there, so we're not spending so much on busing and spending more inside the classroom so that every child gets an excellent education.
All right, thank you. Ms. Patty Lewis, the same question for you.
Yes, I think the number one issue is lack of funding. The current formula is not adequately funding our schools, and this has to be addressed. You know, our schools are so important. Investing in our schools is an investment in our future. Oftentimes here in Kansas City, Missouri, folks move out of the area because of the school systems, and I want to keep people and working families here in Kansas City, Missouri. I've been working closely with members from the Kansas City and Center Public School Boards to learn what I can do as state rep, and what I've learned from them is we've got to fully fund our schools, and we also have to fund the Missouri school transportation. So that's something I will advocate for. I will champion for our schools, and I want to keep people here in our community.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to have time for our closing statements. I'm going to go to Drew real quick for a 2-minute closing statement.
All right, well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure to speak with members of the South Kansas City neighborhoods. I've lived in Waldo since 2012, was born actually in this district at St. Joseph's Hospital, and grew up my entire life in the Kansas City area. I really look forward to bringing my experiences as an attorney to bear for the people of Missouri and the people of the 25th District. I have experience in higher education, in affordable housing. My current case as an attorney, I work on the opioids litigation. So that's also something that's very important to the state of Missouri, that we finally achieve and implement a PDMP so that we can protect people from the addiction crisis and find where the people find the doctors, find the pharmacists who are not necessarily acting ethically. I really believe strongly in public service. I look forward to being a representative who you can get answers from. I'll be accessible. We'll have office hours weekly when I'm in session. You'll see a weekly newsletter. I'm very vocal on Twitter. You can find me being a real person there every day. You can also reach me on Facebook. And my phone number is plastered all over the internet, as well as many of your doors when we were knocking. I was able to reach 6,500 doors before we had to cease. Me personally reached 6,500 doors before we had to cease door knocking because of the unsafe nature of COVID. And we've been calling thousands of voters since that. It's very important for me to know the issues that are important to this district if I'm going to represent this district well. That's exactly what I've tried to do. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about me, you can do so at my website, rogersforprogress.com.
Miss Patty Lewis, your closing statements. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Well, I first of all want to thank you so much for organizing this event and bringing in so many different communities throughout the district. I appreciate the opportunity to share and answer your thoughtful questions. I'm going to just step back a little bit and tell you a little bit more about myself. I've been in healthcare for 20 years as an ICU nurse and as a healthcare executive. I've been advocating for people my entire professional career, from the most vulnerable patients in the hospital to the teams I've led. I was born and raised here in Kansas City, Missouri. I actually grew up in South KC, and I've been involved in community service my entire life. I currently serve on several boards and volunteer with several organizations across the community. And I will be your advocate, and I am looking forward to advocating and fighting for a better future for us all. And the reason why I decided to run for state representative is because I am extremely concerned with what's happening in our state. Poor legislation and policies in place are leaving folks behind. They're failing us, and I feel compelled to advocate for you and all Missourians and fight for a better future for us all. I'm committed. I want to have a continued dialogue. I want you to reach out to me. I have provided on my Facebook and websites my personal cell phone number. I want to be accessible as a candidate and as your state rep. So once again, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'd love to hear from you on an individual level. Feel free to call me at any time. We're always looking for more volunteers, and I hope I can earn your vote on August 4th.
Thank you very much. So those were both the candidates for District 25, Missouri House Representatives, Ms. Patty Lewis and Mr. Drew Rogers.